like at any point, like, have these people like actually done this? Is this how they prepared for their games? Like, is this why? Is this why we didn't win Worlds in 2018? Imagine if we grabbed a shot of hot sauce before going on stage, like boom, 3-0 for Fnatic. Goodbye, IG. Maybe that was the secret all along. I had so many questions seeing that, to be honest.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to episode 6 of Recall. I'm still your host, Frosk. I'm still joined by the lovely Broxah and Medic, and this is your bi-weekly global League of Legends competitive show where we talk about everything from the upcoming summer split to the road to Worlds and look ahead. How you guys doing?
Yeah, doing pretty well.
Yeah, same. Pretty great. Good to be here.
Okay, gentlemen, with that intro out of the way, we've already started the LPL because it feels like the Asian leagues and especially LPL never stop. Have you guys gotten to check it out, seen some of the explosion? Did you see the famous Anivia top and watch it get absolutely blasted?
Well, there's been a lot of interesting stuff happening in LPL so far. The one thing that I've been really interested in is to see like how much of the MSI meta the teams would bring back over to China, because in the past LPL has always been so unique with all these crazy aggressive picks, and they would play in their own way over there, really. But actually, it seems pretty similar to the MSI meta from what I've seen. One thing that has been pretty interesting for me, knowing how aggressive LPL teams usually are, is that like their most popular top laner so far have been Gwen and Kayle. Obviously, Chinese Gwen is different than European or North American Gwen because they just all in you like as soon as they can. But it's still been interesting to see.
The old Chinese Gnar versus LCS Gnar, or the NA Jace versus any other Jace.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting to see Kayle so high up. Like I was watching Euphoria as well, and Yamada was talking about how laning is a little bit less punishing than it used to be, and I think we're starting to see that in some of these picks. Like the fact you can not blind Kayle, but you can pick Kayle relatively comfortably because you know it's quite hard to harass you out of lane, especially considering they were playing on 12-10 over in LPL right now, so the tower damage is a lot higher than it is on 12-11, even though 12-11 is still higher than it was at MSI. I wonder if we'll continue to see that, because you see it in mid lane with like scaling picks, you see it in bot lane with a little bit more scaling across the board as well, or like even like just relatively safe AD carries that can get to like 3 or 4 items. And now top lane Kayle and Gangplank and Fiora seem to be, and even Gwen, you know, she is a very strong laner, but she's also a very strong scaling pick. Just seems generally it's moving towards that.
This is just a reaction. You just mentioned the tower damage change. Is this, a Kayle's thinking, I can stay safe under this tower? Are there any other elements that you think went to shifting the meta this way, where you can get away with a bit more fragile lane phases and still pop out okay?
I think the durability patch really changed a lot of things, right? Like everyone became generally tankier, like more health, more armor growth, more magic resist growth, more I think base armor and magic resist as well. So it just became a lot harder to actually truly punish someone in lane, because when you would have killed them in the past, now you don't quite kill them, they get to base. And when you would have had a positive trade, now it's like, well, they're 100, 200 HP higher than they would have been in the past, so they don't have to worry too much about your all-in potential. So I definitely think it's like what we expected from the durability patch. I'm just wondering if they found the sweet spot of not being 2018 spring where games were 60 minutes long and nothing happened, and we saw that a little bit in LCK today. Like I watched Fredrik Brion versus Dalmonkia, and the first blood happened 2 minutes before the game ended, and after a Baron had been taken, right? So I am a little concerned that we're going to move towards a super slow meta. But LPL hasn't really fallen into that boat yet. They still seem quite bloodthirsty.
So, oh no, sorry. I was just going to say, from like a professional player perspective, especially someone who's been to the international events many times and then kind of come back to your own domestic region, do you find that between splits, especially like an MSI, that the meta is similar? I've seen this conversation going around that the teams kind of need to catch up from MSI, that they kind of get burnt out and then they come back and maybe the domestic meta is entirely different. Usually big patch changes happen over that time period. Is it difficult for the top team to adjust, or is it like business as usual?
I think it depends on how big the the patch the patch that has come out while you're playing the tournament is. I remember my first Worlds in 2017 was a really weird experience for me because while we were at Worlds, a huge patch came out where from one moment to another, I think that was when they reworked Evelynn. So I was seeing Evelynn like everywhere in my solo queue games, but no one played it, in the official games, and she was also completely different. And sometimes, if you're at that tournament for a long time and the big patches are hitting, either while you're at the tournament or while you're having a short break afterwards, you can need a 1, 2, 3 weeks to fully get back on track and to catch up to everyone. Because while you're playing on these older patches at MSI or at Worlds, well, I guess mostly MSI actually, because the Worlds break is really long. But then all the other teams are, practicing on the new patches, and they are supposed to be one step ahead. At the same time, I think the best teams in the world should be able to pick it up pretty quickly. The champions that we've talked about so far, it's mostly been top lane, but these are champions that top laners should be able to play at this point, that have been in and out of the meta for so long. And for some of the other roles, the meta is actually fairly similar. Like I looked at it a bit earlier today, and like support, jungle, the top champions are the exact same as it was at MSI. Like at MSI for jungle, for example, it was Viego and Wukong every game. Looking at the LPL now, it's still the case. So it depends a little bit, but like Medic said, it's always interesting to see how something like a huge durability patch can actually adjust the meta a little bit. And I think usually you're going to want to find a lane that can just sit and safely scale up. Traditionally, in the past, that's been the AD carry role. And obviously, AD carry role is always going to bring that. But right now, that is kind of the style they're adapting in the LPL. Like, there's not so much Jace, Graves anymore. It's more like the scaling that we're looking for.
So we talked a little bit before the podcast about some picks in solo queue right now, like Janna with a ridiculous high win rate. Are there any like big differences or spread between like what's happening in pro play versus what you're seeing in solo queue on this current patch?
So there's one thing that's really interesting, because in spring, again, speaking about the LPL, because we don't have that much info about the other regions yet, but in spring, there wasn't a single Nami game. And now, well, Nami is the second most played support after Nautilus. Like, Nautilus has always been up there. LPL teams love him, but now an Enchanter support has sneaked right in there. And this is something, and I'm very excited about, something Medic has told very clearly, that he's not too happy about the support change, having to get away from his world-class Rakan, sit on ardent support duty. And I wonder how many of these champions that I'm seeing in my solo queue games will actually sneak into pro play, because every game in my games is Karma, Lulu, Soraka, Seraphine, Cillian, Janna, like, you name it.
Medic's face dying inside more and more as he listens. He's like,
I hated watching the Ardent meta. Like, I really didn't enjoy it. I really didn't enjoy watching like 2018 League either. And I think there is
as an AD carry player, the Ardent is the best.
Sure.
Ardent sensor meta, best meta.
Yeah, I'm not saying it is bad League of Legends. I'm saying personally, I really dislike watching teams scaling up and playing late game, right? And like watching again the Fred Brion versus the Darmon game today. Like, it was 35 minutes, I think, before there was a kill in the game, and they'd look at each other and be
is that the meta, or is that just Korea?
It could just be Korea, and I think maybe it is a knee-jerk reaction by them saying, oh, everyone's more durable now, we shouldn't force fights because we can just, play slower and look for drakes and scale, etc., right? And in LPL, we do see more aggression, we do see more fighting, but my worry always is like, 100%, and I will eat my words if this is wrong, we will see an Enchanter support meta a lot in this season, right, in summer. And I'm not saying every pick will be an Enchanter. I'm not saying you can't play Nautilus, and I still think Leona is good in certain situations, and you can still pick Rakan for engage, right? But an Enchanter alongside scaling lanes is just too strong. Especially when you have Staff of Flowing Water as an option now as well. Because in the past, it was like, okay, we have Ardent, and that kind of worked with Diana in terms of AP, but you couldn't really buff any other APs. Now you have Staff of Flowing Water. It's like, oh, cool. I can just go Moonstone, Staff of Flowing Water, and then my Lilia top is a lot stronger. My Azir mid lane is a lot stronger. It's like you have so many options as a support if you want to play Enchanters to buff the rest of your team, which is great, unless you hate playing Enchanters, and I hate playing Enchanters. I really don't like watching them. So, yes, Enchanters are now the meta, and yeah, have fun, you know? We just won't interact in lane anymore. Cool.
Do you think the meta will evolve then? You already kind of hinted at or alluded to some of the big items coming in for enchanters and how that then impacts the ecosystem for the rest of the picks, like more scaling AP oriented picks. Is there anything else that you think that the meta will shift for over the course of summer?
I think it is interesting to see how different regions are adapting to the meta, because like LPL is still very bloody and LCK a bit slower, it seems, from the games we've watched. Obviously a week at most of these regions, so I do think we'll see a normalization towards slightly lower kill games than spring and slightly longer games than spring, and we'll have this. It will normalize towards maybe a tiny bit more split push than we saw in spring as well, which I would quite like. A bit more threatened side lanes, especially we're seeing, you know, Fiora coming out, but I don't expect there to be a huge shift away from this more scaling orientated meta into an early game, a fight focused meta. But the evolution will be people normalizing, I guess, is the best way to do it. Everyone coming towards a mean of, we don't wait 30 minutes to get first blood, but we also don't tower dive at level 3 anymore, you know? I don't know if Broxah agrees with me, though.
No, I agree. I think, like, in a lot of ways, Riot has slowly made the game less punishing over the past couple of years, really, because you have you have huge kill bounties, you have objective bounties that don't only, both kill and objective bounties will just slowly appear over the game if you fall a little bit behind, and they can really quickly bring you back in the game. We have the durability patch on top of that. Like, I know 2018 Worlds, for example, crap will spawn at level 2 minutes into the game. Like, you would just, as a jungler, you do red, and then you get ready with your Xin Zhao or your Lee Sin or your Camille, and you fight to the death level 2, and then the game is just going to snowball like crazy. But the game has kind of transitioned into full clang junglers, so many tools to get you back when you fall behind. Scaling seems to be incredibly important. We saw it in the Canyon Nidalee game when Damwon played in playoffs, where this guy has an almost flawless Nidalee game. He makes one mistake after being a god for 20 minutes, and the game is over because the opponents outscaled him. And that is really the risk you're running right now, both in solo queue and in competitive. Like, are you willing to lock in the Lee, the Elise, the Nidalee to try to go really crazy early to snowball, or do you just log in your Wukong, your Viego, maybe your Lilia, just scale up?
Just not enough comeback mechanics in League of Legends, because we've had this issue for a very long time, and there's like several, I mean, the LCK builds so much of like their strategy on top of this mentality. I know LS has been super outspoken about it, this idea that if you just minimize your mistakes versus like your opponent, like, you know that they're gonna mess up, so you just have to last longer than them, then eventually you get over the line first. Is Baron, does it need to be buffed? Do the bases need to be weakened? Like, how would you even ever fix this? Because for as long as I can remember, as soon as scaling is there in League of Legends, it's like, just pick a team comp that outscales, and I'm sure we'll get there 50% of the time at least.
I think there definitely is. Oh, sorry. After you, Broxah, man.
Okay, what a gentleman. Well, I know for jungle, the mindset has changed a lot over the years, because back in the day, if I could do 1 or 2 camps and I get a kill, I'm so happy. Like, the only thing that mattered was getting ganks off and getting kills for the team, because when you ganked, you would be so far ahead of your opponent. Now, if I gank someone, but while I gank, my opponent does 3 camps, even if I get a kill, this guy is slowly going to get stronger than me, because while I'll have a small gold advantage, he will build up an experience lead so big that I will never be able to catch up. And then with his farming jungler and his scaling pick, he's going to start taking over and making life difficult for me in 5 to 10 minutes. And in that sense, I think the meta is shifting towards something someone like Ellis must be very happy about, because he's always said, don't log in the Renekton, don't log in the early game pick, just sit back with your scaling pick, wait for the opponent to make mistakes. And now you can do that because you can just sit back, and there's so many tools in the game to give you those big rewards when the opponent makes a small mistake. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I mean, from my point of view, I do like bloody and aggressive games, but I guess it really depends on what you want the games to be like.
So there always used to be this discussion about if the LCK style, generalized of course, because obviously not every team is like this, if the LCK style is closer to that LS style of sit back, wait for someone to make a mistake, and then punish the mistake, the LPL style has been go aggressive, force a mistake, and then punish the mistake. But obviously that then kind of leaves you open to sucker punches where the LPL can put their foot in it, where they win aggressive, you match them, they get flipped, and then suddenly things can snowball very quickly out of control, historically, of course. Yeah. But with the LPL now being so dominant and winning so many international titles, I believe the stat is that since 2018, the LCK's only won 1 international title.
Yeah, because only G2 and Damwon have won since in the last 8 tournaments.
Which is funny because I think this next question is really like, do you see that other regions should start adopting the LPL style? But hilariously, I actually think that it was kind of Invictus Gaming and G2 that kind of created the shift really stylistically on the international stage, if you go all the way back to 2018. So I think it's funny if the conversation ever is like, oh, we should move more towards an LPL style. I'm like, that's a G2 style. We've seen that style in Europe.
Yeah, I also think the generalization that LPL is a bloody region is one that we all talk about, right? And the more I look at it, I think there is a move away from that by the top LPL teams. Now, I'm not saying not all, like some of them are still very aggressive, and some of them will still hands check you a lot of the time. But like you look at RNG and even like EDG to a degree as well, like when they JDG when they were rising to like prominence, they aren't the biggest hands checks teams. Like they play macro incredibly well. They understand. RNG came into MSI as this team that's like, they will lose the early game. They were 2,500 gold behind Tez in the early game in every one of their finals matches. But then they outplay you in team fights. And maybe that's where the hands check comes in a little bit. But the idea that we should just adopt what LPL is doing is really tough, because it's like, well, which team do you adopt? Do you just adopt their incredible infrastructure, their millions of players, and the incredible like region they've developed? Sure, if we could do that, if we could have 1 billion people playing League of Legends, maybe it would work for us. But trying to say you should just fight more because the LPL does that, I think now is such a gross oversimplification, right? And a lot of people seem to ask for it. It's like,
I appreciate you so much, Medic. Because I get so tired, because I agree with you. I don't think that the LPL actually is just an aggressive region. I think they're really good at fighting on item spikes, which is why you typically see them pop off in team fights. They're really good at stalling until certain people get their item spikes. They are very strong at macro, but they think about trades differently, and they think about item breakpoints very differently than I think a lot of the other regions do. And that leads to a lot of skirmishes or fights. And then you put on top of it the infrastructure of having the LSPL underneath, or I guess it's now the LDL, and then having the LPL on top of it. So many teams, the fact that it is a ridiculously stacked roster, that you always have these superstar players on, and it's like the benchmark is to even compete with the LPL teams, you have to at least be able to skill check them. You have to survive them in lane, even if they themselves are not considered the strongest laners within their region. I think actually Gala is a perfect example of that. Gala now is considered a top tier ADC and pops off, but for a very long time in the LPL, he was not a powerhouse that he has now turned into. And it's just hilarious that these sometimes very fragile players from this region can then go internationally and be like, oh, this isn't as hard as it is domestically. And then suddenly you see gods, you're like, what? He was never like this before.
It's the typical world's
I also
as well. Sorry. No, go.
Yeah. Well, I also think that the generalization really goes back to like 2017 and anything before that, because back then I think this was really what it was like. Like LPL was the super crazy aggressive team, LCK was the super slow, smart, out macro region. So you have like the aggressive region versus the slow region. And back then, the LCK would always come out on top, right? Like they were just like on a whole other level than any other region macro wise. But I agree that from 2018 onwards, it kind of changed, and even from the LCK, some of the top teams we've seen since then, like T1 this year, and Damwon, these people are so aggressive and so scary, and that's why everyone fears them, right? Because you know that they can just destroy you at any moment in the game if you're not ready, if you're not prepared, just like how it would be playing against a top LPL team, and I think that's really interesting.
Shifting away from the LPL and some of the pro footage that we've seen and kind of moving more domestically to the LCS and the LEC, are there any teams for either region that you guys think are going to be particularly strong out of the gate that you're really looking forward to?
Really looking forward to is the difficult part of that question, because I think there's some teams in LCS that I do think will be really strong out of the gate. I think 100 Thieves are actually going to look really good coming into summer. They don't have the lag of MSI that obviously Evil Geniuses have, and obviously we talk about MSI as there's costs and benefits to attending it, right? The cost is you have to play a lot more games, and then you get like 2 weeks off before you start your LCS split. And the benefit is you get to scrim against the best teams in the world at the moment, and you get all this extra practice and stage time. And that's definitely going to benefit EG in the long run. But I think 100 Thieves having that extra time just to sit and to evaluate what went wrong for them in LCS spring and come into summer, I think they're really gonna start very strong. I actually think FBI and Huhi are two players that I really enjoy watching in the bot lane. I think Huhi especially, I don't hear enough about him from the LCS when I watch it, in my opinion. I obviously I just love supports, but like the talk is always about Core JJ, and I think Huhi is a bit of an overlooked diamond in the rough sometimes. But he's a very strong player, and I really enjoy watching him play. So.
I agree that it can be a bit of a shame sometimes that the storylines get kind of crazy and the same players get the full. In the LEC is the exact same where the same players get the full spotlight. For what it's worth, I mean, I played in NA for 2 years, and whenever players and teams talk about Huhi, they definitely consider him a top support. 100 Thieves is also a team that I think is going to be really strong in general. I think it's going to be super interesting to see how the LCS plays out, because I know most of the teams boot camped in Korea, and a lot of them have been on the grind for a lot of months now. Obviously, I mean, I'm sitting here in a very nice Team Liquid shirt, so I guess there's no doubt who I'll be rooting for. But I think it's going to be a pretty clear top 4 in the LCS with TL, 100 Thieves, EG, and then I'm expecting C9 with their roster changes, with Jensen coming in, Sven being support. I expect them to show up big time as well. So I think the battle is mostly going to be between the 4 of them. But even down lower on the rankings, I think there were some pretty interesting changes made, like Immortals, for example, bringing back Ignar, taking Kenvi, Lost, and kind of revamping their team a little bit to try to get back on track. And then obviously TSM, who have brought in Mabel, is going to be very cool to see as well, because Mabel is a name that's been around for basically forever, almost as long as I can remember watching League of Legends. Now him randomly appearing on TSM in the LCS. No idea how that's going to work out, but I'm excited to see it.
Because the LCS, Broxah, you just named, obviously, of like the top 4 teams that you feel we're going to be really fighting for it, which, correct me if I'm wrong, 100 Thieves, Cloud9, TL, and EG, yeah?
Yeah.
And it's like, they only have 3 spots, so I guess I would love to know which team that you think is the least likely to make Worlds out of those 4, and I kind of same question for you, Medic, and it's just like, what happens when one of the TLs or the 100 Thieves or the Cloud9s don't make Worlds after all of the crunch that they put in with their rosters? Like, how big is that eject button going to be? Especially for TL.
I mean, it'll be huge. I have doubts about TL Not because I look at the players, I think they're all incredible.
Keep
players.
smiling, Broxah.
Yeah,
Smile through the pain.
Just smile, Broxah.
No,
We'll
I'm like looking at him, and it felt like he was starting to talk about TL, and then he kind of looked at me, and then he was holding back. Just to get it out of your system.
So I think they're all great players. I'll stress that, right? I think that's a very strong lineup. My worry is you have a lot of people that take up a lot of prio in draft, and I haven't yet seen them be able to work around that too well in spring. And because of that, when you have so many different voices calling for priority in draft, it becomes very messy. And often you can end up with drafts that the back end are just like, oh, what do we have left? Rather than like even the front end sometimes, rather than a fully thought out draft that actually cohesively makes sense. I still think they're a very good team. And if they can sort that out, in my eyes, and someone can take a little bit more of a backseat when it comes to draft prio, then they're like #1 team in the league for me. Just until they fix that, I'm going to put them I'm erring more on the side they make some mistakes in best of fives and don't make it to Worlds more than they individual skill carries them to a Worlds berth.
I think if you look at Team Liquid, it's a very, very interesting team you have to look at, because I think if you look at all the player styles, it makes sense. But then, because we have super aggressive players in Buivo and in Hansama, I think Core is pretty flexible. Santorin can be aggressive, but is really good at being a supportive jungler, playing tank, playing Gage. And Bjergsen, so far from what we've seen in spring, is incredible on control mages. So, like, stylistically, the pieces you have make sense. But it's always tricky when you bring in 5 players who all have played professionally for so long. I think all these players have been around for somewhere between 4 to maybe 10 years or something. They've played for a very, very long time, and figuring out who's going to get their attention and what communication is like, because most of these players, from what I know about them, I think they're all really vocal too. So
I think,
like, were you going to play around?
Hansama.
What is your communication system? I think from what I've heard about Hansama, he's also pretty vocal, because I played with Finn last year. He told me a bit about his time in Rogue.
Behind it,
What'd you say, Medic?
He's shy in front of the camera, but very noisy behind it, is what I've heard as well. With
Hansama putting in the work.
Well, we talked about it in one of the previous episodes. It's so interesting because when you look from the outside, like, you never know what on earth is happening in those team comps. Like, you have no idea, right? So because of the way Hansama is coming across, being a bit shy in interviews, you might expect him to not be saying too much. But I'm pretty convinced all the players are really vocal. But that can also be a challenge, because how do you really create a system that works for everyone, and where no one is interested in, like, kind of backseating, but everyone wants to be in front doing the work. And I think, like Medic said, that's also the big challenge that Team Liquid is going to have. I would say if I have to take one of the 4 teams I mentioned earlier that doesn't make it to Worlds, it's going to be a little fun, because Medic hyped out 100 Thieves, and I would say if I have to take one, I don't think they make it. Because I think Team Liquid will find a way to make it work, and I also think C9, with their roster change, will look really, really good. And then
You think Jensen's the missing piece?
Well, it's not only Jensen. Fudge was a great top laner. Jensen is going to be bringing them, like, so much stability. He should easily be one of the best mid laners in NA again. Sven support is the big joker for me, the wild card, but I like the sound of it. I could see it working. And then I think EG is going to be really strong coming off of MSI. Yeah. But who knows?
It's interesting.
Turning our attention.
I have
Medic, you go.
more faith in Cloud9 than I do in EG or TL, which is strange. And
EG just went to MSI.
I know they did, but I guess it's about, like, where my priorities are in terms of what am I putting my faith in, right? I think C9, they announced this changed roster relatively quickly after spring change, or at least it was rumored, and so they were probably scrimming with it. And even if they didn't, like, officially announce it, this roster seems to have been there for a while, right? And I trust Sven moving into support, and I trust Jensen in the mid lane. And then I look at EG, I'm like, okay, they look pretty good at MSI, especially in their win versus T1, but maybe there's that lag from not having as much time off, especially with new players, younger players like Danny and Jojo. Maybe they've burnt out a little bit because they've been doing so much and they haven't had this amount of like games in this amount of time. Yeah. And then with TL, obviously, we've discussed that. So it's strange how that's where my mental priorities are. And I'm not saying that's correct. I'm just saying that's my reasoning behind I would put TL bottom. And then actually I'd probably like say maybe EG. One of those two gets knocked out before I'd put C9 and 100 Thieves in my not making it to World's berth.
If we go into a full scaling meta and that's what dominates summer and that's what determines who goes to Worlds, then the team that's actually going to fall out is going to be EG. Because I have more faith in a scaling 60-minute decision making between the veterans of 100 Thieves, Cloud9, and TL, as well as all of their mid laners comparatively. And that's no slam or slight against Jojo. But then you're looking at some of the best control mages in North America on those other teams.
That is
so, Godspeed. Can you imagine if Azir comes back? Abadage is like, my time to shine.
Bjerg's in there as well. Just like, the Emperor is back.
Okay, so turning our lens towards LEC, give me your top 4 teams and what team that you think out of that top 4 doesn't make it to Worlds.
You went first last time.
I want to...
Oh, wait, do you want to preface? Here we go. Let's go.
No, I want to say one thing quick and then you can go into it. I think
what are you throwing down for TL?
Medic is gonna have a new saying this LEC split because he already went on about how he's so worried it's gonna be boring and support meta is gonna suck and this and the other. Just make sure that you cast every Fnatic game, like one Fnatic game a day keeps the doctor away, because I can promise you. Like, wait, I don't expect them to
if
like
it's
not
Enchanter
play...
supports, shouldn't that be really scary for Fnatic?
Yeah,
potentially.
Like, gonna play Pyke.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, there's gonna be Pyke every game. It's gonna be.
And he's like, soup every day. Come here, Nami.
Exactly. So now you can go.
Okay. Well, thankfully, Fnatic are in my top 4. I think they should definitely be up there. I listened to Euphoria today, and Yamato talked a lot about what he thought went wrong for them in spring. He was saying he was the only coach in their venue, so didn't have any supporting staff there with him, but also he thinks they didn't develop like a foundation of what they fall back to. They were doing stuff that worked, and then when it stopped working, they were like, where do we go from here? And so they just didn't have anything to fall back to. And I think if they can build that in and have those safety nets, they're definitely a top 3, probably top 2 team if they don't collapse like they did last year. Then G2, obviously, our last split, sorry. Then G2. And it becomes a little tricky after Rogue. So Fnatic, G2, Rogue, my top 3. And then I think I'm going to go with Vitality. But I've been bitten by this beast before. And I'm not sure I want to get hurt by them again. It's my last time. I'm giving them a little bit of faith. They're my 4th place. They won't make it to Worlds. But
that's so rude to Excel. How would you betray your lads like that?
I think Excel will start really strongly. If you ask me who's top 4 or top 3, top 4 we'll say, after the first 4 weeks, Excel would be in there for me. I just don't think they make it.
That never matters.
I mean, sure, but like they'll start really well, they'll look really good, and then they'll start losing. So
Vitality, that's a spicy one. I would say, I mean, we can quickly agree on the top 3. Vitality from the outside seemed kind of sketchy in spring to me. It seemed
really
like
sketchy. Like they were very sketchy. If that was a drawing, it was like pencil marks across the.
But I don't really get their solution going into summer personally, and maybe I'll be wrong because, like Rogue bringing in Melrang was also a huge question mark. No one knew how that was going to go, and that was amazing. But it kind of seemed like from the outside that they just had no synergy. That there was something going on in the inside causing a lot of drama and issues. That's just my assumption. So I kind of expected them to just do everything possible to bring in stability. And I didn't expect them benching Selfmade because he kind of looked like the best player in spring, to be honest, at least from my point of view, from the jungle perspective. He did seem to hard carry a lot of the games they did win. But maybe Haru or later Bo can be the piece that actually makes everything function. Because more than anything, these guys seemed like they had so many players who just all wanted to be the protagonist, who wanted to carry. No one wanted to take the supportive role, and if Haro can be that, then that's great. Personally, I would probably go with Mad Lions over them though, because I think Mad Lions had such a good early game, and I feel like with time and hopefully with a better communication system where you don't hear them talking about how much of a mess their mid game and late game shot calling is in interviews. Like as long as they fixed their macro, as long as they fix their communication, which I think Niski should help with pretty easily, both of those things. I could easily see them making it to Worlds because they have such a good early game, and all they need is just to use their leads properly.
They're making it to Worlds? So who out of Fnatic, G2, Rogue isn't making it to Worlds then?
Well, do you think Vitality makes it over the other three?
No, I said I didn't think they would. I said they were top 4, but they're not going to make it to Worlds. And you just said Mad Lions could make it to Worlds, so who did they knock out?
Well, it's them or Fnatic in my mind.
Oh, wow, okay.
I don't know if Fnatic is going to make it. Like, maybe that's a spicy take, I'm not sure, but every time I think of Fnatic in this current moment, I remember them sitting on stage, looking completely mental boomed, and Yamato being the only coach on camera while you see all the other teams having like a full room of staff, and they have made it clear that they are planning on making changes and optimizing that going into summer. But until we have proof of that and until we see that in action, I think it's fair to remain a little skeptical.
Sure.
I agree. I think every time, just like looking at the history of those specific players and that iteration of Fnatic, it feels like it's such a mental block, and it's not like a skill block or something like that. Like, I understand what you're saying, Medic, when Yamato's talking about we had one thing that worked and then we didn't have like the fundamentals underneath it. So when we got figured out, it just like hit a wall. But it really feels like you see the players hit a wall on stage, and it just very, very interesting, the dynamic with Fnatic. But moving away from LEC and LCS, we have a brand new champion. I cannot say this champion's name, so please, one of you, teach me.
Bel'Veth.
That just doesn't feel right in my mouth.
Yeah,
my tongue's doing something weird.
It's like Bel'Veth.
Bel'Veth. Okay. Give me the 411 on this champion. Absolutely broken. Should I be like insta locking her? Last time we chatted, Broxah was like, get on the Swain train in any lane. But I hear that she's already receiving nerfs. Is she terrifying?
I want to hear before answering that. If you don't mind telling me, like, what League of Legends elo are you currently? Because that's heavily going to impact my answer.
Me right now, I'm unranked. I think I've played 9 games in the last, I'm going to say 13 months.
Okay, that's actually perfect. And Bel'Veth is a great champion for you. Because I can promise you, if you are gold and below, you should look at Bel'Veth like a Master Yi on steroids. It's like the higher you go up the rankings, the more the win rate drops. But then when you go down to the depths of like bronze and iron, it's like S++, highest win rate in the game, like uber broken. And yeah,
so
then
my
when you
time
go
to stomp, like, some school is out. It is noob hunting season right now. All the children are frolicking. Now's the time to just start like murdering.
Yeah, you just get that League of Legends client up and running, log in Bel'Veth, run kids down. Just look at it like a Master Yi, but with a couple of skill shots. It is ridiculously strong. But then the fun part is that when you go to like lower elos, it looks so insane. But then when you go to Platinum Plus and like the higher you go, the more the win rate keeps dropping and dropping and dropping. And actually, if you compare like the lowest elos to the highest, there's a 6% win rate difference. I think I looked at it this morning, and I think I saw her in Platinum Plus being like rank 35, whereas in Bronze and Iron she was rank 1 by far.
Why do you think that is?
Kind of fun.
Do you think it's like a curve that like new players just don't know what she does yet, and so it's actually just like in time it will even out? Versus like right now, maybe they're like, this champion's kind of pretty. I think I'll walk up to it, and then it just boom, they're dead.
It could be something like that. I think it. I would say the champion is like an evil combo between Shyvana and Master Yi, where it has the fast clear and the really good scaling like a Shyvana does, the good objective control. But then it has really high attack speed, and if you don't CC it, it's gonna destroy you in a matter of seconds. And I think once people start gaining a little bit more knowledge and experience with the game, and once they start seeing this champion on their screen and they press a CC button on it and it gets one shot, that's where it gets a little bit easier, because the champion has like a lot of dashes, a lot of utility, endless amounts of attack speed. The E gives you a lot of lifesteal, 70% damage reduction, but that damage reduction is for less than 2 seconds. And once this thing is on cooldown, that's a very long cooldown, and that's a very squishy champion running around you.
So do you think we'll see the champion at all in pro play, or is this just going to be like a maybe next time?
Yeah, I think it's a maybe next time situation. She's too snowball reliant, in my opinion. Like, you get her passive stacks, you get permanent stacks if you kill like large minions and epic monsters, and takedowns, I believe, as well. And you're so reliant on getting those. So in solo queue it can work, because if you get a few good ganks off early game, you get massively ahead and you can just take over games. But in pro play, all the enemy jungle has to do is control a couple of objectives, and the enemy laners just have to not die to you early game, and you're totally shut out of the game. It's very much like Master Yi, as Broxah said, in that regard. Like, you can stomp people with this, but if the enemy team has any sort of vocal cords, they can stop you from winning the game.
Vocal cord dift.
I would definitely agree with you. I actually saw one person play Bel'Veth AD carry, and I think at the time that he had like 10, maybe 15 stacks, like I would usually have around 100, just because, when you're in lane, you barely get any stacks, and it just doesn't seem ideal. But then in jungle, like you said, like, especially if you snowball, if you get a lead, you have so much damage. The kit gets like absolutely crazy. But if nothing happens at all, it's so hard to pull off. Also because, like, it does have really good scaling, really good item spikes, and it can be a valuable pick. But the main weakness currently is team fighting. And in pro play, team fighting is pretty much everything. So you can log in Bel'Veth, and if you get a lead, you're still going to be strong. But usually the game is going to be really slow. And if you're not ahead, what are you going to do? Like, you can't really team fight, but you can't really go on a side lane either. So you just kind of exist, and you're not really able to do anything.
It's the strat. Bel'Veth, Taric, Lulu, Yumi top. Wonders played it.
Wait, no, does she have good like wave clear? Like, can she actually play a 1-4 and just like hard push and then wait till people try to go find her and then blow them up like a Kiana?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that she's the best at split pushing if she gets a void coral, because then she spawns little voidlings when minions die. But you only get void coral from Rift Herald and Baron, which is part of why it's so important for you to snowball, because if you don't snowball, you'll never get corals in any way, and you can't do anything at all.
You can get them from champion kills as well, can't you?
Yeah, you can, but that was kind of my point. If you're not strong, you won't kill Drakes, Herald, Baron. You're definitely not killing champions, right?
Yeah.
But you don't get the void corals. You only get like regular corals from champions.
Interesting. Oh, okay. So this is a wording diff here, because I'm the caster. Like, technically you get a void coral from champions and epic monsters, and you get an enhanced void coral from Baron. So
I'm listening to your cast, and you don't say enhanced, medic. I'm adding you immediately.
Wait, I'm never gonna have to cast it, so I'm sorry, Broxah. That's me being very pedantic. But yeah.
No, you're probably right. It's just because I'm a streamer, right? So I call it coral and void coral, just to simplify the
that makes sense
a little bit.
That makes perfect sense.
So, are you guys enjoying do you guys do the in-client challenges? Like, do you do those events at all?
Well, it's passive now, because they've introduced all of these like long-term challenge things. It's not just from the past. You can now get like badges to put on your profile if you've got enough points, or if you earn,
kind of
like if you have collected a certain amount of chromas, you get a badge. or if you've put down a certain amount of wards, I think there's one as well. Like,
What's the greatest, like, what are the badges that if someone, like, clicks on your profile, this is like, I'm a badass? Like, which stickers am I putting on?
I mean, you can get one if you're challenger, so I think that one, if you
Oh,
you've
okay,
got that
that's the
battle,
badass
just
sticker.
put that one in the middle. Do you have any Broxah? Any ones that you are a fan of?
Well, for like the tokens in particular, I've had such a hard time deciding like which I would actually go for. It's really tricky. Also because I have like one token that is actually like challenger level, so they can be like somewhere between iron and challenger depending on how well you've done. But the one that I have in challenger literally is from earning S- grade or higher. So while it's like cool that it's in challenger, I don't really feel like I've accomplished that much to actually get it. But I have a token and a title that's really really cool. I think that's I mean I actually don't even use the title because I have a better one. I'll get back to that. But it's a unkillable demon king.
That is very good.
That is that's pretty hype. That's a good one. But of
what's
course,
that? How did you earn that?
I earned that
He had to
by
kill Faker and get it.
winning games without dying. I think I must have killed Faker at some point too, so maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Maybe that's like a secret mission. But my favorite title by far is Jungle Diff. Like
That is a very good
I saw
title.
the second I saw that title in my inventory, I knew what title I needed in my life and I equipped it right away. It was beautiful.
Medic, do you have a title that you want?
Mine's Elegant is the one I've chosen. I haven't actually
Oh.
played that much.
I'm
League
gonna be really
recently,
honest,
so-
that's very fruity.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be a bit fruity, you know? I'm happy to be a bit fruity. I think Goat is a good one as well. If you get challenged in the Domination, Unrivaled, and Perfection groups, you can get the Goat one. And then I would only play Soraka if I had that, so yeah, that would work.
So, I don't know if you guys have heard of the show, Players. It recently just came out on Paramount Plus. I got to appear on the show. I have not seen it yet, but I have read the entire script. So this is kind of like your open form. I believe you guys haven't seen it because European.
Yep. I do
I
like the
have
name
seen
Cream Cheese.
part of it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait till
But
you
that-
hear
that-
some of the other names.
But that was gonna be my question for you as the expert. Why is the main character having a gamer tag called Cream Cheese?
So, it's made by the same producers from American Vandal, which was a show on Netflix that was kind of a mockumentary, so a fake documentary about these kids in high school that are drawing dicks on everything, and then the teachers like unfairly, it's like a true crime documentary. They're like unfairly punishing them, and so it has a lot of satire and parody in it. And I think if people really understand that context, Players makes a lot more sense. First and foremost, it was written basically in-house by former rioters who really knew League of Legends and really knew esports, especially from a North American side. So coming from very authentic and endemic voices. I believe Jat was was consultation on it. So like this show is legit for any League of Legends fan. I believe we were talking about this, and there's a couple of plays that are mentioned throughout, like famous plays in the script. And if you are a LoL Esports fan, you know all of the plays that they're using in this fictionalized team because you've seen them globally. And I think it's like a really easy balance between the old school 2012, 2013 gamer house scene of esports and kind of it turning the page. So like the primary setup is you have Cream Cheese and Fugitive Gaming, who are kind of like old school Cloud9 in a sense, like very buddy friendly.
Calling them Fugitive Gaming when 100 Thieves exists is I wonder how much Nadeshot paid about.
But they're
just call them 1,000
they're
fugitives,
very
please.
not 100 Thieves though. This is like classic Curse TSM Cloud9, where it was like these dudes lived in a house that was like they do like hot shots and like that. It kind of looks like a frat house, and then They never won. Like, they have failed their entire career and kind of been like right there. Cream Cheese is like one of the oldest players. He's like 27 and he wants to win a championship. And Fugitive gets bought out by a larger org. And it's kind of at the time period when you have all of this money start coming into the North American scene. And to do so, they find this like hotshot ADC player who's kind of like I think they kind of took like Faker and Reckless and kind of put them together to make this character. And the idea is that he's a super famous streamer, and to increase team revenue, the new sponsor comes into Fugitive Gaming is like, you must play this streamer. And the streamer's like really, really good, but doesn't know how to be a team player. And Cream Cheese hole and doesn't know how to be a team player. And that's the story of the competition.
Even just through your description, there's a lot of parallels in my head that arise. I'm not going to mention any of them.
You can very clearly see.
This guy could be this guy. Interesting.
Cream Cheese has a bit of like double lift in him, a bit of hot shot in him.
Well, I saw the extended preview earlier today, actually. And the one thing that I keep having flashbacks to is the moment of them taking like a shot of hot sauce. And I was like, what is going on here? Because I can see a lot of parallels. But I'm also like newer generation of eSport Pro. And I was just thinking, like, at any point, like, have these people like actually done this? Is this how they prepared for their games? Like, is this why we didn't win Worlds in 2018? Imagine if we grabbed a shot of hot sauce before going on stage, like, boom, 3-0 for Fnatic. Goodbye, IG. Maybe that was the secret all along. I had so many questions seeing that, to be honest.
There's like there's a section in it where Cream Cheese, like, I think it's like right before his big previous title game, he, instead of practicing, and this is a classic LPL move. This is like literally what Xiaohu did and just got absolutely just destroyed for it by the LPL community. Is he instead, right the night before a big game, he went to a Britney Spears concert with his girlfriend and like stayed out all night, and then the casters make a call in the game afterwards where he just like misses every single combo and it becomes like a saying to be like, oops, I did it again.
Oh.
So I think it like I haven't seen the episodes. I've only like read the script. There's some jokes that I don't think quite, like, I don't find that funny because it has like some of that sophomoric humor of like, we're drawing on people's faces that you kind of expect with American Vandal. But there are some jokes that I think are really authentic and really resonate with like hardcore esports fans. And I personally think, reading the script, that everyone who is involved with League of Legends esports will find this show hilarious. And it's like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's like pointing at the TV. He's like, yes, I know what that is. It's filled with that. Like, every single scene has something that we like really resonate with.
It's really cool. Hopefully it comes over to Europe soon.
Yeah. Good luck. Get that VPN. But guys, that is it for us for now. Please do not forget to check out the show Players on Paramount Plus. Maybe you need a VPN, but I'm not gonna say maybe you don't. I have a Paramount Plus subscription, and it's actually not that bad. I also watched Halo on it. But check out Players on Paramount Plus, but we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks for episode 7 of Recall. So we'll see you then.